Okay, good morning. I am here to explain some very basic training terms. They're terms that I use in session, and I realize that we go over them really quickly, and it might be best to have a follow-up video to explain them a little bit more clearly and a way for you guys to review them kind of over and over again. We're going to do some really basic stuff. The first thing that we're going to talk about is a lure. A lure is a piece of food that we use to generate a behavior. So if I'm going to get Basil to spin, good, there you go, good girl. So I'm going to use that food to turn her in a circle. Okay, so I'm going to pull her forward and then slowly turn her around. So you can see Basil's a little bit quick. And you can see how excited she is about following the food, so that's good. All right, so that lure used maybe 3 to 5 times. Okay, we want to keep it as few repetitions with food in our hand as possible. Otherwise, it becomes a bigger problem, okay? Once we get the dog to repeat that a few times, we take the food out and we keep it in our treat bag, and we use an empty hand or an invisible treat, right? It's cute. Somebody came up with that, I'm not sure who. So we use the same exact hand signal, but with no food. So we take our hand this way, and we bring the dog forward, and we turn her around in a circle, and then we go into our treat bag, and we give her the treat, okay? So the food prior to the behavior that generates the behavior is a lure. The lure helps us to create a hand signal, right? Once the dog is following the hand signal, here, good girl, that was much better. Then we can start implementing a verbal cue, okay? So a cue, whether it's a hand signal or a word, is any information that we give the dog that identifies the behavior that we want them to do for them to access the reinforcement, okay? So what that means is, if I tell Basil that I want her to spin, I can do that with either a verbal cue or a physical cue, okay? Now, she doesn't really know spin, so I'm gonna try to do this the best I can. When we're implementing the verbal cue, we would say, spin, give her the hand signal, and then when she finishes it, we would give her the treat. Now, there's one more piece of this puzzle that will clean up your training and really help the dog understand why they're getting the treat, and it's called a marker, okay? So cues and lures are all things that help the dog generate behavior, so they always come before the behavior. Then you have the behavior itself, and once that's finished, you have a bunch of things that happen after the behavior. One of those is a marker, okay? So I could use a marker word, like bingo, or I could use a little device like this, like a clicker, okay? So I'm gonna use the clicker now. If you're using a marker word, it works the exact same way. It comes immediately after the behavior and right before the treat is delivered, or the reinforcer is delivered, whether you're using food or toys or whatever for your reinforcement, okay? All right, so I'm gonna put this on my left hand because I'm using my right hand for the cue. So I would do this, spin, and then treat, okay? Now, so that's the marker. The last step of the puzzle is the reinforcer, okay? I happen to be using food. You can use lots of things to reinforce behavior. So what is a reinforcer? It's anything that we add, a positive reinforcer, is anything that we add immediately following the behavior that makes that behavior stronger, okay? So more likely to occur, happen faster, happen better, happen more fluidly. If your behavior is happening that way over time, like if this spin starts to happen more and more when I tell her to spin, that means that positive reinforcement has occurred, okay? So when we're training a skill, you have the lure that generates the behavior, which leads to the hand signal that tells the dog what they need to do to get the treat. The hand signal can be translated into a verbal cue, okay? So that all happens before the behavior. Then the dog does the thing, then we mark the behavior with a clicker or a word, and immediately follow that marker with a reinforcer, okay? So let's put it all together. Spin. Great, okay, so that's it. So we defined lure, hand signal. We defined lure and cues, which can be hand signals or verbal signals. The skill, which is the behavior the dog is doing. The marker, which immediately follows the completion of that skill. And the reinforcer, which immediately follows the marker And that is the thing that strengthens that behavior that we're working on. Okay, so I hope that's helpful. If you guys have any questions, let me know. Thanks.